In spirit of REANIMAL coming out by the same developers as Little Nightmares, I've decided to make an entire storyline of all the games put together. I know for legal reasons we have to say REANIMAL isn't part of it, but as far as I know I'm just a silly little girl making silly little theories. I should also say, hi, I'm Cherry, I'm the one doing this. I am going to be making gaming videos when I get my setup complete, and also film analysis, I'll get back to you on that. And then also game ones. So if you have any recommendations, let me know. And enjoy the show. That rhymed. This video will include all of the main games and their DLCs, as well as the mobile game that came out. Unfortunately, it will not include the comics or books or the Sound of Little Nightmares unless it's extremely relevant to the main storyline. We are going to go in chronological order, not game release order, so apologies if it gets a little bit confusing for you. But from what I believe, the first game is Little Nightmares 2, so let's get into that. Our protagonist is Mono, a mysterious young boy with a paper bag over his head for the duration of the game. Alongside him is Six, the protagonist from the first game, Little Nightmares. The game is set in a location known as the Pale City. This is a warped dystopian area full of inhabitants who are affected by the broadcast from the signal tower. The game begins in a dream. It is a long corridor, and at the end is a door with an eye upon it. Mono runs towards it, but before he reaches it, he wakes up. He is lying in the dark forest. With seemingly nowhere to go, he moves forward. The entirety of the forest towers over him, and worse, there are traps scattered everywhere that he must avoid. Eventually, he reaches a hunting shack. Inside, he finds Six, but upon realizing she needs Mono's help to get out of the location, they become friends. Soon after, they encounter the Hunter, the owner of this shack. He chases the children through the woods as they try to escape, accidentally alerting him. He shoots at them, missing by inches. They sprint through and eventually they reach a tiny shack. Inside is a shotgun, and there they work together to angle it correctly to shoot down the Hunter, killing him. As they reach the end of what is seemingly an island, they encounter a wooden door that they then use as a raft so they can reach the Pale City. A little bit about the Hunter. He is the first enemy that we of course encounter. He is incredibly aggressive and has an obsession with taxidermy. Seemingly he taxidermies all, including his own kind, with other giants as himself being poorly taxidermied throughout his home. He is responsible for the reason Six is trapped there. It seems he is waiting for her to waste away so that he can test out his taxidermy on her too. We know little about him, and he covers his face with a mask with one peepee hole to look through. The Hunter is also the only enemy that you have to kill in Little Nightmares 2. Throughout the story, Mono is heavily influenced by televisions, drawn towards them. Whenever he touches one, he is transported back to that dreamlike area with the corridor and the door. He tries to run towards it, but whenever he makes it close, Six is the one that pulls him back to reality. Furthermore, throughout the story, we encounter what is known as glitched remains. These are ghost-like children that are seemingly past victims, and if you encounter them all, you manage to unlock a secret ending. Continuing on the story, when they reach the Pale City, they encounter the school. Here they encounter porcelain-headed children who are known as bullies. These creatures attack Mono on sight. They gang up and try and beat him, and when Six helps, she is dragged away and captured by the bullies. As Mono goes deeper into the school, he ends up encountering the teacher. She appears human until she lifts her neck, and she has a strange ability to extend it. Running through the traps that the bullies have made and trying to narrowly miss the watchful eye of the teacher, he manages to find Six and rescue her. Together, they manage to make it out of the school unscathed. A little bit about the bullies and the teacher now. So the bullies are these porcelain-headed creatures, and the only thing they fear is the teacher. They are the most vicious of all the enemies in the game. They can be seen pinning other bullies down, beating one another, and setting traps throughout the school. As for the teacher, she appears to be the only one in charge of the school. She commands authority and has an almost abusive way of teaching. As stated, she appears entirely normal until she lifts her neck, which can extend. It is left unknown why she has this ability. In the end, the teacher meets no ill-fated demise. She is left to her own stuff, as Mono and Six both depart from the school. Mono and Six reach outside. She encounters a yellow raincoat. Here it is revealed her true identity. As they venture back on through the Pale City, they encounter the hospital, a decaying and rotting place of wheeled beds and hanging curtains. Here they have to face the monsters known as the patients. They are mannequins that only move in the dark. Managing to get further through the hospital, they later encounter the Doctor. The Doctor crawls on ceilings and walls, a spider-like creature. His limbs bend backwards and his head twitches. He hunts Mono and Six through the surgery rooms and corridors. Eventually, Mono tricks him to going into the incinerator, where the player is left with the choice whether to burn him or to leave him. About the patients and the Doctor. Theory suggests the Doctor isn't as bad as he may first appear. He may be trying to help the patients reclaim the humanity that has been taken away from them due to the signal tower. However, in the process of trying to help these patients, he only ends up creating monsters that the players must avoid. Just like the teacher, he's the only person in the hospital. And although he's not drawn to televisions, like we'll get into further with the signal people, he is distorted and warped in a way that is not natural, so it's believed that he has been affected by the signal tower. Returning back into the Pale City, Six and Mono begin to see people, adults. Although they are no longer classed as people, instead they are known as the viewers. They stand motionless in apartments and alleyways, and they just stare into static televisions. Some of their faces have almost been melted or stretched out. If the TV turns off, they are awakened and they come to attack Mono and Six. However, they do not kill, rather, they place Mono or Six towards the televisions. The viewers were seemingly once normal citizens of the Pale City, except now they have become deeply attached to the broadcast and will do whatever it takes to continue watching television. During another time, when Mono is transported to the area with the corridor and the door, he manages to open it, revealing the Thin Man. He wears a long coat and a hat, and his face is blank. Mono is once again ripped from the TV, as Six does, but this time, the Thin Man comes with him. He enters the city and chases Mono and Six, managing to capture Six and taking her through the TV. Mono manages to evade capture, and he follows Six's glitching shadows all the way to the signal tower. On his way, he confronts the Thin Man, but something peculiar happens. Mono raises his hand, and the Thin Man staggers. Mono pushes, and the Thin Man is hurt. He realizes they both have the transmission power. This ends with Mono managing to completely disintegrate the Thin Man and entering the signal tower. We will talk about the Thin Man towards the end. Inside of the tower, reality appears twisted. Rooms stretch and bend, floors melt, walls breathe. And through one of the doors, after following the music box sound, Mono finds Six. However, she is no longer the Six that he used to see. She is huge and distorted. She clutches her music box. The music is what's holding her. Mono smashes the music box. Six becomes enraged. She tries to attack him, but he evades her grasp. Instead, he hits the music box again and again until it smashes. Six collapses, and she becomes small again. But at the same time as Six changing, so does the tower. It begins to collapse. Flesh and eyes chase them. They jump across platforms as the world disintegrates, and they reach a final gap. Mono jumps, but Six grabs his hand as he nearly falls. They look at each other for a long moment, and then she lets go, allowing Mono to fall into the darkness, and she walks away. Mono lands in the tower's flesh, and time passes. He finds a seat which he sits on, and waits. As time passes, he grows, and his body stretches. His face becomes empty, a coat forms around him, a hat appears. Mono becomes the Thin Man, the very thing he fought, and the story loops. As mentioned before with the glitch remains, you will encounter a secret ending. This is following 6 as she enters the portal, exits a TV, and encounters a poster of the Moor, the location where the first Little Nightmares takes place. The Thin Man is easily one of the creepiest entities of the game, which is in and out of reality during chase sequences, so you never know where he truly is. A paradox is created when the Thin Man tries to stop 6 from abandoning Mono, knowing that this would save his younger self. This would stop the Thin Man from ever being created. By dropping Mono to his likely death, this is what creates him. Instead, this is the driving force to why 6 abandons Mono, and thus the cycle is created. And that is the entire story of Little Nightmares 2. Apologies for the different outfit. I filmed that way earlier than the rest of this, and I was like, do you know what would be a really good idea? Make a whole series. So yeah, that's what I'm doing now. But anyways, that concludes Mono's story. He is stuck in the cycle of becoming the Thin Man, trying to save his old self, failing at it, and then becoming the Thin Man again. Meanwhile, 6's story continues, and that is through the ending we see with her going to the Moor. But in order to do that, we need to go back behind 6's story. I decided to do Little Nightmares 2 instead of Very Little Nightmares just because it concludes Mono's storyline entirely, whereas 6 has a history most likely before Little Nightmares 2, and that is with the mobile game Very Little Nightmares. Beginning with a young girl in a yellow raincoat, just like Little Nightmares 1, spoilers ahead. She is in a dream. She is running away and she locks herself in a shed, barricading the door for safety. And then she awakens in a mansion-like place that is known as the Nest after her hot air balloon has crashed into the attic. She is tiny and alone, surrounded by giant furniture, similar to the world in the other games. She begins to move upwards in order to try and escape the nest. It is worth now noting this little girl is not 6. She simply resembles her and has a yellow raincoat. I might add, the same yellow raincoat. Just immediately she runs into someone else. Someone who is always just ahead in the numerous times that we encounter this other little girl. Like all of the other games, the location relies on capturing children for a reason we have yet to find out. At the same time, we encounter the craftsman. He's a creepy man with long legs that he falls on top of the wheelchair he moves about in, and long arms that hunch his back. Escaping by using the boxes to hide in, she evades him, and she is taken to a different floor for safety from the craftsman. A bit about the craftsman before we move on. The idea is that, similar to most enemies, he is also partially a prisoner in the world that he resides in. His feet have been twisted and are seemingly permanently bound to the chair. There's a theory that he uses the captured children and turns them into dolls for the lady of the house, hence his surgical setup rather than a craftsman's setup. There's a lot that actually suggests this, such as with the leather or skin that he's stitching together, none of it quite matches in shades. And also there is a pile of salt seen, and salt is known to be used to keep meat ripe. Back to the little girl. In this lift it takes her directly to the next major threat, the butler. The butler is a tall man who moves quickly and can hear exceptionally well. The girl must use distractions and hide, waiting for him to leave the room. She manages to trap the butler behind a heavy door and locking him out of the next area. The butler, just like the craftsman, is a prisoner of the world they are in. His hands are locked in a device behind his back, and there is no key to be seen. It seems the device also pries his body from the floor, giving him the sight of floating just a few inches above the air, almost like he's hanging, which is quite a dark metaphor, but that's Little Nightmares for you. He has a telekinetic ability, and he doesn't have to use his arms. He throws things to the little girl to try and catch her. Other than that, he seems to be a relatively typical butler. He enters the playroom, where there's a prominent theme of gnomes from the Little Nightmares 1, something we will venture into when we get to the next game. The room is also where the dolls that the craftsman makes are held. They're all placed around the living quarters, like real people. They belong to the lady of the house, a young girl known as the Pretender. She's a little girl that is just a little bit bigger than the characters that we usually play as. She also has the ability to erase someone just by touching them. She seems to be a typical average spoilt girl. She's also violent on approach. She lives her life talking to the dolls and controlling her toys, and she acts violent towards them if they ever fall out of place from where she wants. She is alone, despite her age. There is a family portrait, however, which seemingly shows the legs of the teacher from Little Nightmares 2, and perhaps the legs of the hanging man from the same game. If these are her parents, that means one of them is now dead and the other is too focused on her job to return home. Although admittedly I can't imagine a teacher's salary is earning that much, but maybe she's just a nepo baby elsewhere. The girl manages to evade capture, though she is chased by the butler as she escapes outside of the nest. She finds the exiting gates. The other little girl that we've been encountering a few times is also there, and they work together to open it up and run into the woods. The other girl falls down, and instead of helping her, our protagonist continues to move on, eventually finding a shed and barricading it closed, which shows us the repeat cycle from the dream we first encountered at the beginning. She predicted the future, most likely she's reminiscing of all the decisions that she's made to get here. Our protagonist accidentally encounters the pretender again. She's seen on a bench, crying, perhaps because she's so alone. An almost human moment, until she turns around and notices her and pursues a chase. The little girl lowers herself through the terrain that the nest sits upon, where it's found the other little girl that we abandoned is actually alive and willing to help us out. She drops a boulder down and knocks out the pretender. However, she isn't killed, and she leaps for our little girl, where they both fall down the ledge and falling into the sea. Only the yellow raincoat resurfaces. In the last credits, the other little girl that was originally abandoned picks up this coat, showing that this was Six the whole time. She takes out a raft to the sea, and she locates the moor. Pretender is dead for definite. It seems that she drowned along with the main protagonist of the game, but the other people inside of the nest are still alive. Their fate is unknown. There is a theory to the idea that whoever successes the person in the moor resides here first, as people believe that the lady first lived here, considering all the gnomes that are about, and since she is the only one who can turn them into gnomes. It seemed that the pretender did have a similar ability in turning people into nothingness, and perhaps that slowly evolved into turning little kids into gnomes. They're not helpful, they're just little guys who run around having fun. This is where some rejigging in the timeline is needed. Of course, in Little Nightmares 2, Six locates the map to the moor, and already has the yellow raincoat. But then she finds it again in Little Nightmares 2. Little Nightmares 2 being an entire loop, it's kind of hard to place it exactly in a timeline. However, as a small thing to note, in Very Little Nightmares we never see Six pick up the yellow raincoat, only move towards it. This may suggest that the yellow raincoat ended up drifting along at sea and eventually came to the Pale City, which is where it was then abandoned along the streets. This also may have happened to Six, where she went on the raft and it eventually drove her over to the Pale City instead of the moor. But of course Six is then captured by the hunter before meeting Mono. They have their entire little storyline, and then Six then escapes to the moor. And of course Mono's storyline has ended, but Six's is still continuing. In the end credits of Little Nightmares 2, she of course locates the exact location of the moor, and that is where we go into our next game, Little Nightmares. Little Nightmares 1, we begin as Six as she is, with her raincoat and everything. She is waking up in a dark, creepy place that is known as the moor, as seen from the advertisement in the secret ending in Little Nightmares 2. According to the comics, it seems Six was forcibly taken to the moor by a man known as the ferryman that sailed her over. Like the other games, we begin in a dream. She has a dream about this slender, tall lady. Of course, this is a big hint towards what her fate will be. Now, the moor is a massive, partially underwater vessel that seems like a cross between a ship and a factory or a prison. The moor is run by terrifying adults, the same size as the ones from other games, who also try and harm the children. Yet the children are primarily eaten rather than captured and killed. Throughout the game, Six moves through the moor trying to reach the exit. We begin in the lowest levels of the ship, where we first encounter the janitor. He appears to be similar to the craftsman from Very Little Nightmares, but he doesn't have any legs, just little stumps that he uses. He's a tall, blind man with absurdly long arms. He wraps children in paper and hangs them up like meat. He can't see, meaning his hearing is exceptionally great. Six manages to sneak past him with tricks, eventually trapping him in a door where his arms are broken. A little bit about the janitor. It seems that his name is actually Roger, meaning he's one of the only characters with a real name. The reason that he cannot see is due to the skin that has sagged over his eyes. It's suggested he's a metaphor for workaholics who is blind to the work he slaves away at, serving as another cog in the machinery for the devilish horrors that occur at the mall. Regarding his near doppelganger in Very Little Nightmares, there's a theory his legs were perhaps cut off, and now he serves on board here after the mansion likely fell apart due to the little girl's death. Venturing on, Six encounters eyes. They serve as a sort of security camera for the lady, the person who runs the mall. If you are caught in their light, you turn to sand. This is something seen throughout the entire game. They are also seen in Very Little Nightmares that further connects the two places. To the next horror, Six enters the kitchen. Here we encounter the twin chefs. Accidentally awaking one of them, she is forced to hide consistently throughout. They prepare the food ready for the mall's guests that we witness boarding the mall throughout the game. They try to capture Six and throw her into the cooking pot, but utilising the vents and shelves, she manages to get past them, leaving them as they throw wine bottles in a last attempt to kill her. A bit about the twin chefs. They certainly aren't the caterers that you'd hire. They repeatedly cough onto the food as they cook, and prepare new foods without washing hands or stations. And judging by the fact they try and add Six into the cooking pot, it seems that they don't matter what meat goes into it, that or they have cannibalistic tendencies. It's also now worth noting that throughout the game, hunger has been a persisting theme for Six. Her name represents the sixth deadly sin of gluttony. She is forced to find small scraps of food as her hunger becomes insatiable. She also encounters the gnomes, something I mentioned before. Little critters that live on board of the mall and run around hiding. They help Six with finding scraps of food, showing that they are very friendly. The hunger doesn't feel natural anymore. She's barely able to move whenever her stomach growls. This leads to a time where the hunger becomes worse than ever, and one of the kind gnomes tries to give her some food, but Six doesn't take it. Instead, she grabs the gnome and eats it. After this, Six encounters the ruler of the mall, the lady, a pale geisha-type woman who hides her face, keeping her power and rules over the mall. She has abilities to turn people into smoke and teleport and seemingly kill with just her presence alone. She is obsessed with beauty and mirrors, avoiding her reflection at all costs. It leads to her demise as Six uses a mirror to reflect the lady's power back at her and defeats her. But instead, Six absorbs the lady's power after, not so shockingly, eating her. Now transformed, Six walks through the dining hall of all of the cannibalistic guests. The adults who once hunted her now die at just her presence alone. Six walks out of the mall and into sunlight, no longer the same person she was before entering. I'd also like to say at this point that one of the major themes throughout the Little Nightmares games is this sense of clutter and disorganisation throughout each of the rooms that you enter. Nightmares 2, there were always piles of dirt and build-up, but this can be presumed from the people who have now been warped by the signal tower. They clutter the floors and have abandoned humanity. In Very Little Nightmares, we encounter rooms of pure garbage and rooms seemingly hoarding stuff, like parts of machinery and planes. In Little Nightmares, we have the same collection of rubbish in the lower layers of the mall. This all represents the idea of greed. A trait most people, enemy or not, have shown to have. It's a metaphor for the overconsumption in today's society. No matter what you own, there is always something better in someone's eyes. Let's carry on with the story. We now go into Secrets of the Mall, the DLC for Little Nightmares 1. This happens simultaneously along Little Nightmares 1. Although someone new, known as the Runaway Kid, he, just like Six, awakens in the moor, seemingly unsure of how he got there, but he knows he needs to try and survive. However, he holds more curiosity than aggression. He explores and he investigates. It's like he's trying to understand what's going on. Unlike Six, he is innocent and he doesn't try and eat everything in sight. He also begins in the lower parts of the moor. He enters an area that is submerged in water where he first encounters the Granny. It's a monstrous creature who swims through dark water and grabs anything that moves. He must stay quiet and he uses floating debris to try and avoid her. Ironically, he uses the TV pushed into the water to electrify her, something similar in Little Nightmares 2 that Mono uses. A little bit about the Granny, she is one of the main antagonists in the DLC. It seems that she is blind, relying on water movements to react. It appears that the majority of the villains here are blind in some sort of way. She possesses fish-like features, suggesting that she has actually evolved. Theories also say that perhaps she was once a resident of the moor, but she has been left behind in the lower levels, perhaps to evade the cannibalism that the guests end up showing towards the end of their visit. As the Runaway Kid continues on, he encounters these shadow-like children, one of the only types of children that are violent. They carry a lantern, using light sources and time switches to stay away from them. Through this, they are evaded. They vanish into the light, but they're not necessarily killed nor destroyed. The Shadow Kids are the same height and look as though normal kids in the game. They are made from a dark smoke. They wear a white mask on their face and shadowy shackles at their ankles, perhaps suggesting children who have died and their angry souls have been left behind, stuck in a purgatory-like state. Throughout the story, he's kind to the gnomes, helping them out, freeing them from cages. At several points, he does see Six through gaps and windows. He's always just behind her, watching her escape danger. However, they never meet. As an Easter egg, we find the portrait of the teacher in one of the rooms, connecting her to the moor somehow. This is also found in the lady's quarters. Perhaps she is a friend or was a sort of celebrity resident, considering she is the only educator in the Pale City. Like Six, he encounters the janitor, but he never fights him, only avoiding him. Before Six, the Runaway Kid reaches the lady's domain, but he is spotted and he is captured. Unlike Six, he doesn't manage to get a mirror, and the lady ends up using her powers to transform him into one of the gnomes. Suddenly it's revealed that all of the gnomes in the moor used to be children. So the theory comes into how exactly did the gnomes get into the Very Little Nightmares area. I mentioned they are spotted in the DLC for Little Nightmares 2. Simply escaped through stuff, they're tiny, they could fit in places. Since the lady doesn't seem to view them as a threat or anything important once they're turned into gnomes. In Very Little Nightmares, the Pretender has a similar power to the lady. That explains the nest, but in the Pale City it's probably just assumed they managed to somehow find their way there, scurrying around for a better life than the one that the moor provides. Now, with the Runaway Kid as a gnome, he continues on, helping others, and in his final scene, he encounters Six, and she's hunched over with the same hunger pangs that she has. And he offers her some food, but instead, Six eats the Runaway Kid. And that concludes the Runaway Kid story. Moving into Little Nightmares 3 that has just recently been released, it is worth noting this wasn't technically made by the original developers. They instead moved to a different project to work on REANIMAL. Unfortunately, the partnership company didn't align with the wishes that they had. And that Little Nightmares 3 still matches the overall theme that the whole saga does. Mono and Six do not join us. Mono is of course trapped in the same cycle of becoming the Thin Man. Six's future is unknown. We don't know if she continues to have the hunger pangs. Maybe it was a hunger for power that she now possesses. So what has she done? Most likely she may have returned to the Pale City to find a new life, but again, we'll never know. Back to Little Nightmares 3, we begin with a boy called Lo. Like Mono, he wears a mask, but this is a raven mask. He begins in a dream just like all the other games, and he sees a window in a mirror. Just like Mono and Six, his dream alludes to the future awaiting him. Once he awakens, we encounter Alone, a girl wearing an aviator mask and also having her face covered. Introduced to a new location known as Necropolis, a mix of words with metropolis and necro meaning death. Dystopian wasteland with remnants of what seems to be aircrafts. Originally, it seems they have travelled through a mirror and are locating the next one in order to continue travelling to eventually escape the nowhere. The world in which all the games take place. It's like a continent or an entire Earth, we're not too sure. All along the land and end up bumping into an arm, but this arm belongs to the monster baby. Monster baby seems to live here. She's a doll with the ability to turn anyone into stone using her eye, much like what we've seen before in the games. Perhaps those were the eyes of the dolls where the bodies were never used, or worse, their eyes were harvested and the body was either destroyed or left to roam. Speculated she runs more on curiosity than intent of violence. She's unaware that she is actually a threat and that she's committing murders. She's seen playing with the people that she turns into stone. This is where we begin to see evidence of a past life. Those turned to stone are known as the Dwellers. The city is almost frozen in time. Some of them have black eggs stuffed inside them that belongs to giant beetles that they have to take down, most likely protected the area of its rest. Both Lo and Alone are grabbed by the monster baby and thrown down into the rubble. Lo begins to have a flashback of himself being in a padded room, hiding. At the door, shadows grow. But when he suddenly awakens, it's now night time. Once again, Monster Baby forces them to move on, but she is driven away by a group of birds, and curious, she accidentally saves both Lo and Alone from death. She isn't encountered again, left to resume playing in a city that never moves. Although possessing a similar ability to Mono, he's able to travel through mirrors that crack once they are used so they can't return to where they were. Next, Lo and Alone wander into the Candy Factory. Haunting metaphor for the artificial system of maintaining livestock, as seen with the bloated herd transported around the factory. The owner of this place is the supervisor, a six-armed woman who watches on security cameras. Upon turning off the camera system, she is enraged and pursues them. It is revealed that she has spider-like movements as she detaches her upper self from the rest of her body. About the supervisor, she seems to be one of the only competent people in her field of work. But of course, once agitated, she loses that control, detaching herself to go and pursue anything she can. So it's more like a metaphor for placing yourself in something that you're really not, for the sake of workplace balance. Once again, Lo and Alone encounter bugs. They are flesh-eating bugs that they must evade. It seems that there is a prominent theme of bugs used throughout, perhaps a metaphor for rotting and decay in the city that they now reside in. When chasing both Lo and Alone, she is crushed by the hydraulic press. After the supervisor's death, they travel through another mirror, but in this one, Alone shatters it and is left unconscious for a few moments. She's thankfully okay, and they hug in a beautiful embrace of appreciation. Next we are at the carnival. There's creatures that are similar to the guests from Little Nightmares 1, and they beat corpses like they're a piñata. Yet there's also the gnomes again, and we can actually hug them as a cute little Easter egg. In actuality, there is a theory to suggest that the place they are in, the wasteland, used to be the ocean, meaning the building they were in used to be the mall. This would end up setting Little Nightmares 3 far in the future, away from Little Nightmares 1 and 2. And if that doesn't happen to be the truth, then gnomes are known to be sneaky and hide a lot, so perhaps they just accidentally stumbled their way along this place. They end up encountering the puppets, or the marionettes, and the child-sized residents of the carnival. Their bodies are wooden, but their faces are rotting, indicating they're made from flesh. Reanimated, possessed dolls that hunt down the protagonists. They act as agents for the kin. the puppeteer. They manage to evade the puppets using their weapons and teamwork to take them down. When they eventually reach the next mirror, it already has a crack in it, meaning it can't be used. Left with no other choice, they must continue to roam the place they're in. This is where they find the kin. They awaken the kin and Junior, a little head with arms that he keeps as a pet, who then begin hunting them down. Junior is quick, easy to locate them. Here, Lo is caught while Alone escapes and she must save her friend. Upon being saved by some clever sequences, Kin chases them down through a raining carnival playground. Eventually, they encounter a hot air balloon that they use to escape, but Junior makes the jump across. They manage to set him ablaze and continue on, until of course, a lightning bolt shoots them down. Lo awakens in the same padded room. He seems to have sketched the places that they've already been in the game. He hides the sketches upon hearing footsteps, and he also hides under the bed. We end up seeing a doll that resembles Alone exactly. We begin to wonder, is this real, or is this a hallucination from a poor kid in a psychiatric hospital? He awakens back in the nowhere. They have both survived. They have arrived to an institution, most likely another nightmarish challenge to go through. Exactly like the hospital from Little Nightmares 2, it almost looks abandoned, but of course it isn't. Spirits here of old patients, like the glitched kids from Little Nightmares 2. And the danger are the plants that use a tongue to strangle their victims, and blinded nurses that pursue the protagonists. It's a ginormous warped man who serves as the main antagonist. Let's talk a little bit about the sounds of Little Nightmares. It talks about a man called Otto. Otto used to be a counsellor that wished to go to the nowhere. He wanted to hunt down his sister who has been missing, but unfortunately he isn't a good person. He is psychologically abusive towards his patients and is obsessed with getting to the nowhere and will stop at nothing to get there, even if it costs his patients sanity or their lives. Whatever he did granted him permission to get there, but of course it came at a cost. Now a twisted version of himself, ginormous, stuck inside the institution. Also alludes to a place existing outside of the nowhere. Is it a different continent, or is it a sort of multiverse situation? We don't know, but it's fun to speculate anyway. As he travels, Lo encounters a room matching the padded room he often awakens in, meaning he used to be a patient of Otto, and his fears whenever there was footsteps outside of the door. The door resembling Alone obtains a power. It's able to project a small aura that allows them to view the hospital as it once used to be, where it's clean and it's tidy, and closed doors are now open. Continuously encounter Otto's twisted, mangled arms throughout the rooms. Notice that he has an eye on his palm as well. Finally, they reach the mirror from Lo's dream, but Alone won't follow. Due to this, Otto ends up catching up with them and snatching the mirror away. They work together once again to destroy Otto with their weapons, using the eyes on his palm as a target. Tumbles down the institute with a final bash of the room they're in, causing Lo and Alone to fall in another moment like Little Nightmares 2, where they hold on together. But nobody lets go. Instead, the concrete comes crashing down. Lo awakens in the padded room again. He is cuddling the Alone doll. She suddenly turns into the real her before he awakens. They survived the fall, as did the mirror. And once again, Alone refuses to go through it. But along with his insistence, they end up travelling through. But unfortunately, Alone is rejected by the mirror, spat back out. And it cracks, meaning Lo made it through. Slowly, Alone's body disintegrates, leaving just her clothes on the floor. Meanwhile, Lo is at the other side of the mirror, sad for the loss of his friend. Alone didn't have Lo's power. In fact, Alone didn't exist. He left that horrific world behind. He had to leave his imaginary friend too. Alone was born through loneliness and fear, needing a friend for comfort. In order to follow his dream, Lo had to leave the life that he once led behind. including alone. The entire game is a symbolism for Lo's mental state. It seems all the games use the protagonist's power as a reflection of their mental state. With Six devouring the lady feeling the confidence to take charge, Mono using the TV's power due to his connection to the signal tower, and this might be why Alone tried to save Lo, because she's someone to trust as she doesn't exist, considering nobody can really be trusted in the nowhere. Although on a technical standpoint the Little Nightmare saga ends here for now, we still have REANIMAL, the latest game that just came out this month. It's not technically connected to Little Nightmares in any sort of way. I find there's a lot of interesting plot points here and a lot of themes that show a similarity. This game was made by the original developers. Once again, important to say legally it cannot be connected, but I still think it could technically take place in the nowhere, if not perhaps a continent in the same universe. Before entering, the game says you are playing as brother and sister. Two-player style, much like Little Nightmares 3, but it can be played solo. At the beginning, it seems to be in a dream once more. 5 kids are staring down a well, and you're at the perspective of whatever is down there. They wear masks, all of them their faces covered. One boy has a noose wrapped around his neck. It's clear that he has a story to be told. Guilt, perhaps? A tie to repetition? That same boy awakens on a speedboat. He's surrounded by water. There's only red blinker lights as warnings. As he drifts the boat forward, he's unaware of how he got there, seemingly. Suddenly he finds a body in the water. A girl, his sister. She wears a torn bunny mask, bunnies being a symbolism of innocence and rebirth. I thought you were dead. Where are the others? The immediate subtext that this was no accident. Something has happened that departed the two. They continue on the speedboat that leads them to an abandoned factory after evading mines in the water. It seems people once lived here and were at war with something, or trying to keep something out. The factory furthers this, showing evidence of people fleeing in a hurry. Then we encounter a little boy. Their height, someone they clearly know, but they can't get to him, but they're determined. In this area there is the first enemy encounter, the Sniffer. He's a humanoid figure with a large head and a fedora hat. He's obsessed with human skin, carrying it as a suitcase. Perhaps he's a major reason to flee the location. He's what becomes of the people who stay. He crawls on all fours, creating the skins that target the children throughout the town. He is the one who captured Hood, their friend. He drives an ice cream truck, perhaps serving as a metaphor for the idea of ice cream being something entirely unnatural, the theories that surround it of being made by kidnapped kids. This is supported by the Sniffer mimicking human behaviour, offering an ice cream to one of the kids before he captures them. Is this who he was before, perhaps? Unfortunately, the moment they rescue Hood, he's immediately recaptured. Follow the Sniffer to the cinema, which showcases a peculiar movie that everyone seems to be asleep at. Another metaphor. Apart from the Sniffer that almost seems to operate here, they manage to retrieve Hood and make a run for it, but the Sniffer is relentless. They steal the ice cream truck where, eventually, he is run over by their own truck and the children drive on. Actually on foot again after a crash, they explore more of the world. Remnants of a war is clear considering the amount of artillery and defensive mechanisms. Did they lose, or is this the warped enemies as consequence? We encounter the Bandage Kid, another friend, but a giant deformed pelican chases them down, taking Bandage away. They corner it into a barn where living pigs seem to be held, and then set the barn ablaze, with the pelican inside and the pigs too. They manage to save Bandage, who's scared and shaken, but alive. Strangely, they move to a bus stop where a bus actually appears, but before that, the girl asks why they're there. But something weird happens. She clutches her stomach in pain. The others are terrified when she coughs. And then we see a vision of a lamb stuck twisting in a well. The same well they were all looking down. She tells the others of this, but the bus arrives before they can answer. The driver is dead, but takes them to where they need. Is this a vivid hallucination? Whatever it is, it works and it furthers them along in the story. Next is the boarding school. Inside, faceless children that are made from dust wander the corridors. Again, similar to the glitched remains in Little Nightmares 2 and the spirits in Little Nightmares 3. You didn't hear that from me. Here they locate Bucket, their next friend. Unfortunately, he's been lowered down into a pit alongside pigs to a creature they call Mother. Spider-like tendencies and legs with human arms mixed in. It's a blob of something fleshy and furry. And it is the thing spitting out these dust children into existence. She eats to produce more of these. They lure the mother into a hole, using spears to kill her, and eventually being able to go into her mouth and pull out the bucket kid. After escaping Mother and the dust children, they encounter a military truck. Soldiers are still here, or perhaps souls stuck in an eternal war. It's unclear if the soldiers are evacuating the children or escaping on their own terms. "Why'd you come back for me?" the bucket kid asks. He didn't expect them to, and that's an answer we need to find out why. The girl is too busy clutching her stomach again. The question is overshadowed by her hallucinations of the lamb once more, but at the same time, the truck crashes. Blocking their path is an underwater creature they must kill using artillery. It's the Brook horse, inspired by Swedish mythology from a creature that lured children into water. At the creature's death, they travel underwater, seeing the horse-like creature up close. There, they take one of its eyes. This eye is used to appease the new underwater creature they face, a giant mutated blind whale. However, the horse creature isn't dead and chases them out of the water. Now with the whale, a lot of symbolism is happening here. Once they give the eye, the whale moves along so they can pass through. It's almost like a ritual, giving it the power of sight perhaps. Throughout the game, the girl has an ability to comfort the animals that the brother can't seem to replicate. She's kind, she's a natural soother. Once again, soon after, the girl clutches her stomach in pain. A hallucination threatens and the boys are once again terrified, unsure of what will occur. But instead of the usual, she throws up the same lamb she's been seeing. It runs away as the others stare in horror. The boy, her brother, carries her on his back. She's too weak to move. Here, the story is changed. Immediately, the sheep begins to grow, distorted and warped. It abandons the sheep-like ideals and loses its animality, becoming something nightmarish. The innocence of the lamb is now gone. It takes them, taking Bucket first, then the bandaged kid, and Hood. Each time it eats, it becomes bigger, sprouting human limbs. A sniper fires at them, infected by whatever they lost in the war perhaps. Soldiers begin to blow themselves up, finding comfort in death. Brother and sister encounter a tank on their way, finally in control, able to hit the sheep. Once again they're damaging the enemy, but this time the sheep is relentless, mutating and growing at every shot. It takes down the tank. Now it's an enormous size and swallows it. But they aren't in her stomach. They're in a location more similar to the signal tower's insides. The girl follows her brother's voice, lost, encountering a dead rabbit. As she goes near it, she is transported elsewhere. Flashback again. And we're here to uncover the truth. 4 boys have the girl wrapped, dragging her forward to the same well that's haunted the girl this whole game. They're quiet but persistent, and she's still alive trying to thrash her way out. The sky rains blood. Symbolism strikes in the form of sheep-like figures gathering. Then we cut to the bottom of the well, where 4 boys look down at us. Her body lifts and raises, testing her use. It's a blood ritual, using her as a sacrifice, killing the white rabbit, the same rabbit shown throughout the game. It seems that she is accepted, and it creates the lamb deep inside of her. At the end of the credits, we see the well flooding, where the girl floats to the top. If you find all 5 coffins that contain this white rabbit, you get another ending. Tar-like creatures with masks approach her body, reassembling her, mourning her. They're seemingly how the well flood. Likely due to the war, the boys used a blood sacrifice in hopes of stopping it forever. They use her, the lamb, an on-the-nose metaphor, but it's done really well. The sheep she creates is almost her, what she was used to come and avenge herself. Of course, the ritual didn't go as planned. Perhaps they weren't specific enough, or perhaps it's a cruel irony. It's almost acting like the monkey's paw situation. And that, so far, is the full story in the franchise that is Little Nightmares. Thank you very much if you decided to stick around and watch this. Leave some love to the buttons around you, you know, if you're feeling a bit frisky that way. If you'd like, I can cover some recommendations of games that you want to know the full story about, or cover some theories, anything. Please, anything. If you're a rare person from my Twitch channel, I'm sorry for the lack of games. I've had issues with the setup and the Wi-Fi being unable to carry the streaming or something. I don't fully understand it. But I'm hoping that'll be sorted pretty soon. We cross fingers. Have a great week, and I'll hopefully see you next time. Bye!